Interesting fight coming up this weekend. Little bit of a cut and paste. Last weekend we were supposed to have Vanessa Demopoulos, Silvana Gomez Juarez. It has moved to UFC 270. But we've already talked about this fight in extensive detail. So we're going to throw it on over to that video. We'll update you with the odds and the particulars heading into this matchup at 270. So let's throw it on over to the video from last week. At a combined age of 70, with 23 pro fights between them, the UFC has marketed this fight as strawweight prospects battling it out. We have Vanessa Demopoulos, the Lil Monster, taking on Silvana Gomez Juarez, La Malvada. And Matt, when I was getting ready for their respective UFC debuts, yes, they were both on incredibly short notice. For Gomez Juarez, she was supposed to compete on Dana White's Contender Series. She gets the call. She takes on Lupita Godinez. For Vanessa Demopoulos, she's supposed to be taking a fight with LFA. She gets a short notice call up a weight class against JJ Aldrich. And it wasn't a very favorable matchup for Demopoulos. Same thing can be said for Silvana Gomez Juarez, because if you look at Gomez Juarez's technique and her style, it's very reminiscent of a lot of her training partners and the people that she works with over at Entram Gym. You've got Marcelo Rojo, you've got Brandon Moreno, you have so many good fighters that are pressure fighters, very aggressive with the striking, very good head movement, technical boxing. And for Gomez Juarez, I thought we were going to get that in the debut against Godinez, but she got backed up, she ate the straight shots, she got taken down with ease. And for Demopoulos, she has such a good ground game, and I'll break it down into the nuts and bolts and the pedigree that she has in her grappling, but she had recently switched gyms. She'd been working with Fight Ready, Eddie Cha, Santino DeFranco, and again, I can go on and on. Zhang Wei Li's training there of all people with Henry Cejudo and Davison Figueiredo. But for Demopoulos, it was kind of like the Keith Richards riff. And she just couldn't get started up. And after the first round, where there was a little bit of striking, it was just JJ Aldrich, who ended up winning that fight by all three judges' accounts, 30-27. So a bit of a disappointing start for both of these women in the UFC, looking to right the ship, looking to earn some wins in their career. And the thing that's a little bit disappointing to some of the fans, too, is if you look at the 5-on-in, 3-2 for Silvana Gomez Juarez, and for Vanessa Demopoulos, 2-3, albeit against a good level of competition. And for Gomez Juarez, you look at it, I mean, she fought Vanessa Mello outside of the UFC, you know, the bantamweight that had a hard time making bantamweight. She lost Ariane Lipski with KSW for the belt, you know. Sometimes the queen of violence, sometimes not. So
often not.
For both of these women, very, very differing skill sets. It is a clash of styles. But I look at this fight, and I know you have something to say, and I feel the same way.
We've sold enough Wolf tickets on both these fighters to sell out like Wembley Stadium. Like, Anthony Joshua has sold less tickets lifetime than the Wolf tickets we've sold on these two fighters' skill sets, because I agree with everything you said, but you really have to water it down quite a bit. And I don't say that to be rude to either one of these fighters, but it's very similar to what the NBA is going through right now, with a lot of players just not being able to play and finding replacement players to just put in their spot. Like, we were joking around about Lance Stevenson coming back and playing for the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, he looked really good. It's funny to see him do the air guitar again. Oh, it's funny. Like, I remember being a hardcore fan in the early 2010s. It's great to see those players come back. But they're replacement players for a reason. There's a reason they're not out there every single game and every single day. There's a reason Gomez Juarez got her call up to the UFC at 36 years of age in the strawweight division. And same thing with Demopoulos. Like, we talk about her grappling, but when you get beat that soundly by somebody like JJ Aldrich, who isn't a fighter that we ever talk about as being someone who will ever reach the top 15, that's when I start to not really look at you through that prospect scope anymore. You can either one day become a Jeff Hardy, or you're just Paul London for your whole career. That's what it is. They might have very similar skill sets, but one is much more memorable than the other.
What if Brian Kendrick's watching this?
Brian Kendrick's had that little run. I forget who his manager was, but he had a run. I think he was Intercontinental Champion at one point. Either way, I don't think when we're talking about this fight, we're talking about two people who are going to go on and have, like, I don't know, like Jan Blachowicz-esque runs at any point, where they're going to figure it out later on in their careers. I agree with what you said. It very much is a clash of styles, to where if Gomez Juarez is her best version, and I do like what you said, because in her last performance, we didn't see the fighter we saw pre-UFC at all. She was that technical boxer who really did have that Entram Gym sort of background. You looked at her, it was a very stalking forward type of a game, where she would go to the body, it would open up her headshots, and she has great boxing combinations. But then you get to the big show and we don't see any of that. So I'm just really concerned to see someone like Juarez fighting a similar matchup to her last opponent. I know Godinez is probably a more refined and honestly a better version of Demopoulos. They do a lot of similar things, although Demopoulos does have that win on her record. I just feel like at this stage of their career, Godinez is a little bit more complete of a fighter. That's why I see Demopoulos winning this matchup based on the style, but I just don't know what they do with Demopoulos after this, because I still don't think getting a win over Gomez Juarez then sets you up for great things in this division.
Well, it's a really tricky one. I mean, for Gomez Juarez, she actually trains with one of Combate's biggest and brightest young stars, and I want to make sure that I get it right. It's Jasmine Haraji, and she's such a great fighter over there. Just won a Combate tournament a year recently in the past year, or this past summer. Somebody really good to lean on, kind of work your complete game, and if you look at it for Demopoulos, I mean, again, very high level competition all the way up through the loss to Corey McKenna, who just had a fight booked against Elise Reed that I noticed on Marcel Dorf's Instagram. Wow. She had the loss to Lupita Godinez after that. She beat Cynthia Arcio, which was a really, really impressive fight. And then she ends up against JJ Aldrich. Again,
the Arcio performance, sorry to cut you off, was very similar though to when Cheyenne Bays landed that head kick like 2 fights. It was one of those like, I'm going to throw really hard early on and thank God I landed.
But when you do look at it and you boil it down, again, two very differing styles. For Vanessa Demopoulos, 2-time Pan American grappling champion. She's a BJJ champ, the world over, 7-time national champ, 5-time world champ, brown belt in BJJ. And again, the refinements and the different things that you're going to be able to add to your game by going to Fight Ready, working with somebody like, maybe it's a Tracy Cortez, maybe it's Zhang Wei Li in your own division. It could be anybody over there. There's so many names that are moving to Arizona to train right now. And for Gomez Juarez, I look at it, very, very aggressive, very good technique when things are on. And I mean, you look at it, the fight against Lipsky, it was Queen of Violence. There was a very swollen eye, and it was the Argentinian's eye in that fight. But I go down and I look through it. She did struggle quite a bit against Godinez in the striking. All right, so we're going to update you with the odds, and it's always funny when fights get booked and rebooked. The fact that Gomez Juarez now opened a -130 for this fight. She's a +118 underdog. For Vanessa Demopoulos, open a +100. She's a -142 or thereabouts. It is an average. It's from Best Fight Odds. Now, if we look at the Tapology votes, I wouldn't be surprised if a large contingent go with Demopoulos. Would you?
I think she'll be the favorite.
All right. So, no. 448 total votes. 63% Juarez. 84% by decision. For the 37% that have Demopoulos, 75% by decision. And I mean, for Demopoulos, it's interesting because she got out everything in her last fight against JJ Aldrich. For Gomez Juarez, she also got out everything in her last fight. She did land a really nice right cross at one point against Godinez, just to get taken down again. So
it's like when Isaiah Thomas signed his 10-day contract with the Lakers and everyone got excited for what the potential of that could have been. It's like, well, he doesn't play defense. He didn't hit any shots. What are we doing here, you know?
Yeah, that's what we got out of Silvana Gomez Juarez in her year 37 season on this planet. So, again, you have Entram Gym all over this card for Gomez Juarez. She's going to have a bit of that, not hometown feel. You are close, I guess, to the gym if you want to go that way between Anaheim and Tijuana. But for Argentina's Silvana Gomez Juarez, another big opportunity here to right the ship with a win over Demopoulos, who's 2-3 in her last 5, albeit against a much higher level competition.
Exactly. And the thing about JJ Aldrich is that no one's ever going to remember her as this like top level fighter, but she is very well rounded and she does have some decent boxing. She's just good at everything. Not good at everything. She's just okay at everything. And if you get beat by someone like that when you're Demopoulos, well, Aldrich is bigger. Like, there's a few excuses that you can kind of have in your back pocket. I just think the grappling of Demopoulos is going to be overwhelming for Gomez Juarez. Now, if this fight's contested 100% on the feet, Silvana will have a phenomenal chance to win, and honestly, she could probably damage Demopoulos to the point where in the second, third round, she might be able to get TKO doctor stoppage, something like that, but I do just think the pressure of Demopoulos' grappling is really going to get to Juarez.
I'm going with Demopoulos in this one. I think another fight camp, as I had mentioned before, at Fight Ready. You also have footprints from that gym on this card, including in the co-main event, Figueiredo now training out of there. You also have Zhang Wei Li as well with Eric Albarracin and Henry Cejudo, a guy who has pillows of famous MMA figures at his house. Look into it. But on this one, I'm going with the 2017 author of the Stripper Bible. It is Vanessa Demopoulos.
She was on the Netflix show Ultimate Beastmaster, too. Fun fact.
A lot of fun. Didn't know that. Listen, you want to have these fun factoids to share with your friends when you're watching UFC 270? Tell them those Canadian nerds told you all that fun stuff.
Well, no, tell them that we're doing a fight companion for UFC 270. It'll be live during the pay-per-view.
Look at that. Salesman Matt Allen, both of us going going with Demopoulos. In this one, let us know who you have down below in the comments section. And keep it locked in with Fight Name Picks. We always say, let's get into it.